Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I think after today we should do like a rota with the classes. Everybody can get a chance to give a class. I believe that includes everyone. There's no escape. So what you may want to do is, as you're listening to class, if there's a few things that you think, oh, I could maybe make a point about that, you can jot it down. And then when it's your turn to give class, you'll at least have those things to say, plus whatever else you glean from the purport. It may not be so well organized that we can say a few days in advance. So you have to be ready to give class on the spot sometimes. Which means you'd have to kind of dredge your mind of all the things that you've been reading so far and show how it all aligns. Because it all interconnects with philosophy. So reading from Srimad Bhagavtam, this is Canto 8, it's chapter 7 entitled Lord Shiva Saves the Universe. And it's text, is it text 32? 33. And another thing you can do, if you're giving class and you're not sure what to say, then you can ask everyone else to help you give the class. So you can read that. Oh, Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Vishnu is not omniscient. This does not mean, however, that Lord Vishnu is not omniscient. Lord Vishnu is omniscient, but he does not need to understand what is going on in his all-pervading expansion. So then you could say, what do you think Prabhupada means by that? So, text 33. Yatvatma Rama Gurubir. So it's Yatvatma Rama Gurubir Hridit Chintan Tangri. Dvanvam Charantam Unmaya Tapasa Bitaptam. Katanta Ugra Parusham Niratam Smasane. Shmasane. Te Nunam Utem Avidam Stavahata Laja. Ye Tvatma Rama Gurube Hridi Chintakangri. Dvanvam Charantam Onmaya Tapasabitaptam. Katanta Ugra Parusham Niratam Shmashane. Shmashane. Te Nunam Utam Avidam Stavahatalaja. Ye Tvatma Rama Gurubir Hridi Chintatangri. Dvanvam Charantam Amaya Tapasa Pitaptam. Kantanta Ugra Purusham Niratam Shmashane. Te Nunam Uttam Avidam Stavahatalaja. Hey Tvatma Rama Gurube Hridi Chinti Tangri. Niratam Smashane. Te Nunam Uttam Avidam Stavahatalaja. Yaitai tatvatma ramaguru veridenti chinti tangri. Dvanvan charanta manmaya tapasa pitaptam. Nam uttama vidasa tavahata Yatvatma rama guru vervedi chinti tangri. Dvanvam charanta mamaya tapasa pitaptam. Katanta uga parusham niratam shmasane. Tainunam uttamavadam savahata. Yatvatma rama guru vervedi chinta tangri. Dvanvam charantam umaya tapasa bitaptam. Katyanta ugra parusham niratam ashmane. Tainunam uttama vidata tachata. Yea, persons who, two, indeed, Atmarama Guru be, by those who are self-satisfied and who are considered to be spiritual masters of the world. Hridi, within the heart. Chintita angry dvandvam, thinking of your two lotus feet. Charantam, moving. Umaya, with your consort. Uma. Tapasa abhitaptam, highly advanced through practice of austerity and penance. Katante, criticize your acts. Ugraparusham, not a gentle person. Niratam, always. Smashane, in the crematorium. Te, such persons. Nunam, indeed. Utim, such activities. Avedan, not knowing. Tava, your activities. Hatalaja, shameless. Exalted self-satisfied persons who preach to the entire world think of your lotus feet constantly within their hearts. However, when persons who do not know your austerity see you moving with Uma, they misunderstand you to be lusty. Or when they see you wandering in the crematorium, they mistakenly think that you are ferocious and envious. Certainly they are shameless. They cannot understand your activities. So responsibly, please. Exalted, self-satisfied persons who preach to the entire world think of your lotus feet constantly within their hearts. However, when persons who do not know your austerity see you moving with Uma, they misunderstand you to be lusty. Or when they see you wandering in the crematorium, they mistakenly think that you are ferocious and envious. Certainly they are shameless. They cannot understand your activities. Papa Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Shiva is the topmost Vaishnava, Vaishnavanavam Yata Shambhu. It is therefore said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigya Nabujaya. Even the most intelligent person cannot understand what a Vaishnava, like Lord Shiva, is doing or how he is acting. Those who are conquered by lusty desires and anger cannot estimate the glories of Lord Shiva, whose position is always transcendental. In all the activities associated with lusty desires, Lord Shiva is an implement of Atmarama. Ordinary persons, therefore, should not try to understand Lord Shiva and his activities. One who tries to criticize the activities of Lord Shiva is shameless, without shame. Om Ganatimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha paritanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Cheers. So, interesting. So Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva is always transcendental. So if you're given class, you can say something like, what does transcendental mean?
Transcendental means beyond the material sense perception.
Beyond material sense perception? Any others? What does it mean? If somebody was, you're on the street doing books, and somebody opened the book and it said transcendental, and they said, "Oh, I've heard that word actually." What does it mean? Walking around with a T-shirt with "Om" on it, is that transcendental? Or I've got a Himalayan rock salt lamp in my bathroom. When I get in, I feel really transcendental. You'd say it's not that sound. What's transcendental and what's the opposite of transcendental? Lord Shiva is transcendental.
I thought it's beyond the material, so spiritual, and the opposite is material. I'd have thought, but I don't know.
Yeah, so what is that then? What is material and what is spiritual? Is this microphone material if it's being used in Krishna service, or is it spiritual? No. If everything's Krishna, isn't everything spiritual?
I guess our perception, the way it's transcendental when we use it for Krishna service, whereas opposite would be for own sense enjoyment.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada said it was like having an iron rod in the fire, so the iron rod is not fire, but by the association of fire, then the iron rod changes its quality. So something can then be spiritualized, which means when it goes back out the fire, then it reverts back to being cold and dark again. And when it's put back in the fire, then it becomes hot and it gives off light. So the material can be spiritualized if it's connected to the spiritual energy. And so Lord Shiva, he comes in contact with the mode of ignorance, but at the same time he's always transcendental. So he's unaffected. Although it looks like he's affected. And that's why people that are shameless, they will say, oh, Lord Shiva is with Uma, he seems to be very lusty, and he's got all these ashes all over him, and he's in the crematorium, therefore he must be ferocious and angry. And so to be able to appreciate that somebody is transcendental takes a certain level of developed consciousness to appreciate it. Like Dristaya Svabhava Janate Papasasta Docha, La Prakrita Miha Bhakta Janaji Pachi, Gagandasan, and Kalabudva Defena Pankya, Brahma Dravatam Abhagachati Nirodama. You know that? Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee having a body born in a bad family, bad complexion, diseased or infirm. The body of a pure devotee is not polluted, just like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season is full of bubbles, foam and mud, but those who advance in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. So you could look at the Ganges and think, well, that's not very transcendental. So being able to appreciate transcendence is itself almost as difficult as being transcendental. And we carry with us a mundane idea of what transcendental means, you know. Oh, he didn't smile at me. Or he told me off and he looked really angry. He's not very transcendental. He should have given me a hug and a daffodil. So we carry a mundane idea of what we think transcendental means. And then that can get us into trouble. If you look at Lord Shiva and think, he doesn't look very transcendental. And so Srila Prabhupada's warning here that we have to become sufficiently educated as to be able to appreciate. But he says even the most intelligent person cannot understand what a Vaishnava like Lord Shiva is doing or how he is acting. So if it's not through intelligence, then how do we develop the ability to appreciate what is transcendental?
So it's fascinating, this idea of being transcendental. And we hear about Lord Shiva, or the version of Shiva when he came from Brahma's eyebrows was screaming and very angry. And we hear that in order to be destructive, it has to be a process involving anger. So can the emotion anger be transcendental as well if it's used in a spiritual context?
Well, Srila Prabhupada's saying here, he says, even the most intelligent cannot understand. So what is our process for understanding? What process do we employ, if not intelligence, to understand? What process do we employ, if not intelligence? Prabhupada's saying, even the most intelligent cannot understand. Because we generally relate your ability to comprehend something determined by your level of intelligence. So if it's not your intelligence, then what method will you employ to understand transcendence?
Somebody else's intelligence. Higher intelligence.
Which means having faith, which isn't considered scientific, is it? If you just have faith in something, how are you going to understand by having faith? How would faith bring understanding? Just speak, don't worry about the microphone.
You are quoting from part of Srimad Bhagavtam mentioning and how to apply what to employ to understand the transcendence. So yes, to have the faith on Vaishnava, because a Vaishnava devotee always engaged in a service which pleases the Lord. So, and we find in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, one of the purports Srila Prabhupada mentioned that a devotee can do the worst activity in material point of view, but yes, but it may please the Lord. According to the point of view, the materialistic person, that he has done a great bad things, but uh, it may be pleases the Lord. So if someone pleases the Lord, he must be a Vaishnava. Therefore, we should have faith on the Vaishnava, and that we should have this faith that it is very difficult to understand his mind, the way he is going to please the Lord.
What if somebody performs abominable activity
Yeah.
and he says, it's okay, I'm pleasing the Lord by doing this?
Yes, we can understand it. Abominable activity, yes, to some extent we can understand that people are cheating, that we have this tendency to cheat others. So, like,
It is, I know that I can see the point that I HG Adhoksaja, so we should consider a devotee saintly. But the qualification is that if the devotee does perform abominable activity, he then rectifies himself. He doesn't continue, and he's remorseful. He doesn't just say, oh, that was pleasing to the Lord. He says, that was very bad that I did that. I displeased the Lord, and I'm very sad now, and I'm going to continue on in the process of rectification and purification. That pleases the Lord. So then he's still to be considered saintly, but there must be rectification. If he behaves in a way which is against the principles, and even if somebody is ragatmaka or raganuga, and he does something, then he won't act contrary to what the principles are. He'll always follow the principles, very nicely. Even though he doesn't really have to, actually. He doesn't have to follow any rules or regulations. Okay. But still, back to the same question. What is the process we employ for understanding transcendence if it's not intelligence?
Accepting the spiritual authority, following parampara, disciple succession.
Yeah, it's an interesting statement Srila Prabhupada's making, because you need intelligence to bring you to the point of realizing that you can't use your intelligence, which is interesting, isn't it? That you need the intelligence to ascertain, to discriminate that this is a pure devotee. Time is one of the best dimensions for measuring who are the pure devotees. How long has he been serving? How steady is he serving? Has he had any scandals, or he's continued on steadily, untouched by any anomaly? And then we think, okay, he seems... So that's why devotees are very fortunate now that are coming to the movement, because we have devotees that have been performing devotional service for 50 years, unflinchingly. So it's very obvious, okay, that's obviously a spiritual master, Whereas in the beginning, they'd only been around like 5 or 10 years, still a work in progress. So we do have that great fortune. And then, by being submissive to them, we can then give up our intelligence. So like you say, that we take shelter of authorities and we have faith in them. And then also as you're applying it, like you may have your idea, you think, no, that's wrong. My idea is much better than that. But then you think, okay, well, I've been asked to do it that way, so I'll just do it that way then. And then then you gain the realization and the experience, and like, okay, so that did, although my intelligence didn't see it, by following it, then it worked out, you know. Tadvadi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya upadekshante te jnanam jnaninasthapadashanaha. So it's like, it's submissive by rendering service and by inquiry submissively. Whereas with intelligence, a person could be super intelligent, but he could also be challenging, so he could be antagonistic.
Knowledge can help us to. Okay. So, can knowledge help us to understand the activity of a Vaishnava?
Can knowledge help us to understand the activity of a Vaishnava? So what's the method for acquiring the knowledge? How do we acquire the knowledge in the first place?
Learn from authorities.
From authorities. And how do we know who the authorities are?
Because they follow the Shastra, and they live by example. So we can see their authorities because they are totally congruent with their behaviour and what is described in the Shastra. So then they can be trusted. What they are saying is trustworthy.
It's interesting, the Shastra, there's Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So the Guru and the Sadhu are only of any value if they're aligned with the Shastra. So the main thing is the Shastra. But the Guru and the Sadhu will understand how to apply the Shastra. Whereas a neophyte may have the Shastra, but he may be struggling how to implement it. And I'm just reading his Mood and Mission now about Srila Prabhupada. So he took this culture and he brought it to the West, and he was able to have people who were totally, according to the Vedic system, unqualified, take up pure devotional service, you know, which was more than even the smarter Brahmins, the Jata Goswamis, all the people that have been born into this tradition and culture, been born vegetarian, trained in celibacy, know the Shastra by rote, so many ways, so intelligent. And suddenly, Srila Prabhupada comes to the West, and then these Western devotees circumvent all these intermediate stages and come to the Shuddhanam. So that's the great fortune if you get the association and the shelter. And the word understand is interesting because when Indra was sending down torrents of rain and he lifted up Govardhan Hill, it didn't make any sense. Nobody understood. It's like, you know, the rain was coming down and they were going to drown, and they're trying to find some high ground. And, you know, Krishna's lifted this mountain. And Krishna's saying, come here. So it just doesn't make sense because all the water's going to rush in. Everyone's going to get drowned anyway. And how long can he hold it for? You know, it looks for a really dodgy option. And, you know, we'd be thinking, I'll take my chances with an airbed going down the river. But I'm not going to go for that. So it wasn't something which you could understand. It didn't make sense. But yet they stood under, instead of understanding, they stood under the hill. They just took shelter. And once they were under, then they understood. Everything's going to be fine. So that takes a leap of faith. And it means putting aside your understanding to understand something deeper. And it is like a leap of faith. It's like, I don't think this is going to work, but well, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to do it anyway, you know. And it's like that with us, you know. Every day we go out and we do service, and there's some challenge there, and we decide to just throw our heart into it and have that leap of faith. and then things work out. But still, every day we have to build up our faith muscle so that we keep doing it. Till we get to the point where when the mind is saying, I don't understand this, we just say, that's okay, you never understood it anyway. And we just brush it aside. But it takes constant, relentless training to get to that point. And we're trying to do it all in one lifetime, but we've been here for many lifetimes, in many species. It's really heavily ingrained in us to go by. See, there's eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And the defending is the most powerful one, because what you're trying to defend is your eating, your sleeping, and your mating. So this defending, this fear, is the one that pervades everything else, you know. And because you're fearing things, you're trying to defend, you're using the intelligence to defend, to make sure everything's going to be okay. And all that psyche has just been from all the different species. I mean, all the different species are using their intelligence to try and understand the situation, to make sure that they're not under any risk, you know. They're all trying to do that. And then we come into the human form of life, and we've got all that still going on inside, you know. And we have to put that aside and stand under rather than understand. Stand under, not understand. So it just takes training to be able to do that, to get to that point where you naturally just have faith in Krishna and you go forward and you take shelter. Any questions or comments? It kind of highlights a major obstacle that we have in the society of devotees, is to become devoid of the propensity to criticize others. And it's just automatically there. The neophyte, the Kanishta, he's judging everything, judging everyone. What's his devotee like? His seeker, my seeker is better than his. Look at the way he's paying his obeisances. I pay my obeisances much better. Where's he standing in the temple? He doesn't seem very prominent. I'm standing in a really good position. And how's he offering the arti? Oh, my cycles are much rounder than that. It's just automatically there.
Thank you, Prabhu. I'd like some clarification. We seem to need to use our intelligence to be able to ascertain if someone who's instructing us is fully congruent with the things that they are expounding. And so there must be some kind of discernment or judgment, but then we also have to abandon this. Let's say, for example, there's some leaders in some parts of the movement who are not congruent with the scripture, but they are trying to lead the movement. And maybe there's people within around us as well. They're maybe at times congruent and at times incongruent. How do we, are we supposed to trust that Krishna is going to manage all of this, and we just surrender that discernment and take guidance from people who seem not to be fully congruent with these things? Or
well, generally you'll find during the course of your life and your career in Krishna consciousness that you're proven wrong quite a lot, and you start realizing, okay. So what Arjuna did was, he said, well, this is the way I see it, but I'm very happy for you to show me a different perspective. And then he did, and he was convinced. And he did it in a humble, submissive way. Karpanya dosa patai says, look, I've completely lost the plot. Can you tell me now? I just don't know what to do, you know. So he came to that point of being submissive. So if you are submissive and humble, the false ego will think, well, people are going to take advantage of me now. He's going to ask me to clean the shoe rack with the red cloth. And I know that the green cloth is much better for cleaning the shoe rack. So now I'm going to be forced to clean the shoe rack with the red cloth rather than the green cloth, which is a shame because it'll take me half an hour longer, whatever it is anyway. But and so in one sense, it's the wrong thing to do. But because you're doing what you've been asked, it's the right thing to do. although it doesn't make sense materially, because it's going to take longer. So it's how to get to that point where we can be submissive, and like you may have a spiritual master and he may leave, but you, and it would seem, well, he was directing you properly when he was aligned, and then he steps out of that alignment, so now he's no longer somebody that you can follow. So if the line of authority is in line, then it's fine. Then even if you follow something which later turns out wasn't the best thing, because you were doing it to follow the system, what Srila Prabhupada wanted, the line of authority, then you're okay. And the example given by the Muslims is, if a king is collecting taxes and then the king becomes a rogue, actually it's not the king himself, it's one of his tax collectors. So then the king comes along and his tax collector has not brought him the tax, and then he says to the citizen, where's the tax? And he says, well, I paid it, but the tax collector went off to Santa Fe. So then the king is like, okay, well, you behave properly. You followed the system. I've got a problem now with the tax collector, so that's not your problem. So that's the way Krishna looks at it. You try to comply, you try to be submissive and follow, and don't try and figure it out too much yourself. Just fall in with that. And then you won't come to any harm. If you follow the system, then you won't come to any harm. The system will protect you. But if we feel the system is wrong, and that people are being exploited or taken advantage of, and it's unfair, then everything becomes really awkward and difficult. Or we could see something like the Uttam Adhikari, his heart's devoid of the propensity to criticize others, which means, and Uttam Adhikari means he's a spiritual master. So the spiritual master's first duty is to chastise. So how do you chastise somebody if you're devoid of the propensity to criticize somebody? It means that you're not criticizing them. You're just helping them to see that they can do this much better than what they are. Whereas the criticism is just a put down for the person. The person becomes discouraged, you know. You say, you're a rubbish singer and you're a useless cartel player. And then the person's like, rather than, you can sing this better, you can play the cartels better, you can learn better. You can refine. So that wouldn't be critical, although at the same time it's a chastisement. What do you think of that? So yeah, it doesn't always make sense. Govardhan Hill didn't make sense, but then when they did it, then it was fine. You know, they were sheltered. So we have to stop trying to find shelter in our intelligence. That everything will be okay if I've checked it all out and everything's according to how I think it should be. Because how we think it should be is very limited. Our awareness of how things should go, you know. Like the man who had he saved up and bought tickets for everybody to go on an ocean cruise. And his son got sick. And he was going to leave him with friends, but it could have been a fatality. And he decided to forgo the ocean cruise. And at that time, it was in the 1900s, people were really poor. And he knew he'd probably never get a chance to go again. And then a week later, the ship that they were going to go on was the Titanic. And so he was, at the time, he was a bit miffed about everything. But then later on, he thought, okay, it was good that I did that, you know. So if you follow Dharma, which is following authority, following the line of authority, and you comply with that, then you'll be protected by it. Those who follow Dharma are protected by Dharma. But it does at times seem counterintuitive.
Hare Krishna, Guru. Yeah, so sometimes someone may disguise in a form of authority, and then so what
Pretend
do?
to be an authority.
Yes, yes, and then what to do in these kind of
He
situations?
wouldn't get away with it here, would he? You mean in a very big temple?
Oh,
If he came in with a danda, it turned out he wasn't a sannyasi.
I suppose.
Turned out he was just a snooker enthusiast with an orange case. So somebody disguises himself, or somebody asserts himself as an authority, and then tells you to do something. So obviously, then that's where the intelligence comes in. Is he authorized? The intelligence is there to analyze. Is this authorized? And that does require intelligence. And also, Srila Prabhupada said, when you're looking for gold, you at least have to know what gold looks like. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to get the real thing, right? So you need intelligence. And then if he's authorized, then whatever he's saying to do, that's fine, you know. There was one devotee who was telling us that he had this authority, and he had gone a little bit, kind of, the power had got to his head, and he was telling them to rip down the staircase. So they ripped it down, and then he said, actually, no, put it back. So they built it back up again. And then he says, no, actually, rip it down, you know. So he just followed, you know, although it was a waste of time, but he followed, you know, whereas he could have just said, forget it and thrown the spade at him, you know, but that wouldn't have been good. So that's what's going to happen from now to whenever we leave our body. Our lives will be peppered with incidents where we feel like throwing the spade down or throwing the spade at him, you know, and we have to just be submissive and go, okay, well, you want the staircase down now? Okay. Because he's still around, that devotee. But other devotees became offensive, and so they left the movement. So it makes, you know, according to your understanding and your intelligence, it makes sense to refuse to do it. But spiritually, it didn't make sense to do that, because then you lost the shelter of Krishna, because you weren't prepared to just comply with whatever the situation asked of you, you know. And then if the person was wrong, then Krishna would remove him, which is what happened. And I've seen that happen so many times. As soon as the person's wrong, then it's not you that removes him, Krishna removes him. I mean, you may mention to some authorities about it, but it's actually Krishna that does it through his representatives. ISKCON Guru Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shishiko Nitai Mai Pachashi ki jai, Gaura Premanandi. Hari Bol.
His Grace, Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki.
All of you ki jai.